What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS live stream for the Worldwide Technology Championship at Mayakoba. Going to break down everything you need to know for this week. An event I honestly have killed over the last 2 years. I won the GBP $5 150 max 2 years ago. Last year had about a 4x, so I'm looking to go for that three-peat like a Victor Hovland there. And it's an interesting golf course. It's one we don't see every single day, where it's on the shorter side, but it still is able to test players from tee to green. So you see a lot of those ball strikers play well, and a lot of the top end players like JT, we've seen here a lot over the years. Scotty Scheffler has played 3 out of the last 4 years. Victor Hovland, the centerpiece of this event, all show up because they know that their games are going to translate. So that should be fun. Hole number 7 with the cenote in the fairway, which, by the way, if you don't know what a cenote is, just a little bit of an aside here, you probably heard about it a bunch. That's like a cave diving site. There's something called the Grand Cenote over there in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I'm somebody that's a little bit of a cave diving enthusiast. I don't do it myself. I am going to someday. It's something that's on my bucket list. You can actually go into the cenote. That's a huge cave system and go diving in it. That's how deep it is. It goes like miles down the quote unquote Grand Cenote, which I believe is actually right near Mayakoba, like within 15 to 20 miles there. Has something like 100, 200 square miles of caves and tunnels underneath the ground. It's some crazy stuff. So pretty cool that they have that on the golf course. And then just, again, from the DFS side, we've got some good names here for once, right? It's not the Bermuda Championship. So looking forward to it. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. So as we typically do, we're going to take a look at last year's tournament to make sure that we're all on the same page, have a pretty good baseline for what to expect from El Camaleon Golf Club. So it's a shorter golf course. The course yardage is just over 7,000 yards, and it played to right around 2 shots under par. So you're looking at a birdie fest. Players were making an average of like 4.5, 5 birdies per round. Players were going out there being relatively efficient, but the percentages for fairways and for greens were lower than you'd expect, right? So you'd think with a birdie fest that, almost every single player was hitting greens, a 2 under par average, that not many players were getting into trouble. Not so much the case, right? They only hit 56.7% of fairways, which is just over 7.5 per round. And then with the greens, they only hit about 2/3 of them. So it was more about how easy the greens were. When you miss greens around this venue, they're only running at about 10.5 on the stimp meter. That's because they're past pollen grass. And it's a Greg Norman design, which, if you've seen them on tour before, tend to have the least undulation of almost any course designer that you see. And they run really slow because they're past pollen. I mean, slow, flat greens, that's what you're used to playing at your Mooney, right? And you're out there making a pretty good amount of putts. You can be aggressive. You don't feel like you're going to hit it 5 to 7 feet past the hole. These players, they score when they're in those sort of conditions. So that's why you see the scoring average closer to 2 under par. You still get a test from tee to green. So that's what I was mentioning, right? The ball strikers. So first off, Victor Hovland, right, won the last 2 years, 23 and 20 under par. You had JT, Scotty Scheffler, Joaquin Niemann. First of all these live guys, right? Niemann, Wolf, Answer up there. Garcia, Gooch. Literally, it was like a live leaderboard up there at the top of this leaderboard. I think that's why the field is so weak this time around, is all of those sort of like mid-tier players. Brooks Koepka was in this field last year. Went to live, right? It wasn't like your top 5 to 10 players in the world, right, that were going to live at this point. Like 1 or 2 have at this point, Cam and DJ. It was these mid-tier players that rounded out these fall field events. So like, that's the one thing I'll say. Like, you guys know, like, I'm somebody that's not going to bash live. I went to the event this weekend. I thought it was fantastic. I hate to say it, it was more enjoyable than the PGA Tour events in person. Like, it was catered towards young people, right? It had music. It had like stations where you could hit slap shots. They had like a pitching. It just had a lot of like extra stuff to do other than just watch the golf that I think younger people would enjoy. Like, this is the one issue with live, is like the field strength is just gone. It's tanked. Like, these sort of fields are no longer as deep as what we had before. So like, when we get into the pricing later, we're going to go player by player with my projections. This top 10K range is solid, right? We have some top 10, top 15 players in the world, and then it drops off like a cliff. Tom Hoge is $9,500. Mav McNeely is $9,400. These guys are way too expensive for what they bring to the table every single week. So that's the consequence of live. I just kind of wanted to talk about it because it's something I noticed when going through the leaderboard, right? It's pretty obvious that you have a lot of those names towards the top. And yeah, it's having consequences on both tours. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I honestly don't know. Like I said, guys, I guess I'll give like the 2-minute spiel because I actually went to a live tour event. I'm able to give the spiel. Anyone that says that like there's not people there were about 10 times more people at the live event than there were at the CJ Cup. I can tell you that because I was at both events the last 2 weeks. That is an undeniable fact. So, anybody on Twitter that's like, oh, like there were like 200 people at the live event, they're just saying that, right? They obviously weren't there. Anybody that's there can attest to it. And there's videos of all of that. A couple other things about live. The golf, right, itself, it's just like any other PGA Tour event, right? So like if you're there in person, I know the live broadcast can be a little bit dry. The broadcasters try to like hype things up. It's a little bit annoying, but like in person, all of that is gone, right? It's like your regular tour event. Either concessions were about what you'd expect at a PGA Tour event. Merchandise was pretty average, but the real key that I liked, right? And this is more towards like the younger people. If you're just there for the golf, like you're a golf hardo, there's not going to be much of a change, right? But let's say you're bringing your girlfriend with you, you're bringing your kids with you, and this is the huge one, right? You're like bringing like your little kids with you to the golf tournament. It's a completely different experience. I mean, like for the kids, like there's hours and hours like of activities that they can do, like from anything from like different sports challenges. They have like an actual green from Trump Doral that players were able to like putt on, so you could see like how fast the greens were. Like they found a lot of little creative ways to like entertain the guys that aren't there to watch the golf, right? So like think about it, you're a golf fan, like I don't have a wife and kids, right? But if I wanted to go to one of these events, it gives so much more incentive to be able to go, right? Because like your family doesn't want to go to watch golf shots, right? But you can go to the golf event, you can watch a few holes if you're in that situation, and the wife and kids can go to the fun zone and go dick around for the entire event while you actually watch golf, right? Like I think they're on to something. That's all I'm going to say about it is I think they're on to something with the in-person experience. From the competitive side, right? There's so much they have to get together. PR side, their team names are atrocious. They need to balance out the teams. There's a lot of things that have to improve, but the in-person experience, that's one thing that I like really want to hone in on, was unbelievable. Like I can't say enough about it, to be quite frank with you. Let's hop back into this though, that live rant aside. I wasn't expecting to do that. I wasn't even thinking about it, but it came up. It was probably important to do at some point, just because again, I had such a positive experience. I have to say that it was one of the better events that I've seen in person. Unfortunately though, for this field, it's a relatively weak field, and you're going to see that for a lot of these fall tier events. The weather's the first thing we should touch on when we're trying to break down this PGA DFS slate, and it's exactly what you'd expect for this part of the world. So tropical conditions along the coastline. This time of year, it's going to be wet, just like it is down here in South Florida. So you get those, afternoon showers projected every single day, and you can see they're projecting it to sprinkle from 11 till 4 p.m. I can guarantee you it will not sprinkle during that period, right? They're just projecting all of that rainfall over, let's say, like a 5 to 6 hour period that they know is going to come down in maybe 5 to 10 minutes. That's how it works when it rains down here in a tropical part of the world, like it does down here in South Florida. It comes down rather quickly. So it's not going to be downpouring the entire time. I expect it to maybe have a little bit of a drizzle. They say showers, thunderstorms. So if we go to some of the other sites here, so this is for tomorrow, they have scattered thunderstorms. So there's a chance when it comes through that they end up having to stop play. Weather Channel isn't quite as negative about it. They say thunderstorms too. I guess they do. So they're all saying that there's going to be a chance of thunderstorms. So you could see a delay, but even if it goes into Friday, first off, the weather threat goes away. So if we go down here on Friday, they don't have it on there. Let's go to the Weather Channel. They definitely have Friday available. So you can see it's just partly cloudy, right? So that chance of thunderstorms goes away. You can see that same thing over here on Wind Finder. So if they end up having to push it into the next day, you're looking at clear conditions in the same sort of wind. So I don't think there's going to be a huge advantage to be had. There could be a delay on Thursday. There could not. Last week for the Bermuda, we thought there was going to be a delay pretty much every single round, and that never ended up happening. So I think that's just something to keep in mind there, that it's hard to guess what's going to happen in terms of some of these weather delays. And from the wind perspective, it's literally almost uniform. I mean, look at this on Thursday, right? You got like 10 to 14 miles an hour winds. Over here on Friday, it's 13 to 16 miles an hour, so slightly worse. But even if it bleeds into Friday, maybe even into Saturday's round, I don't know what we're looking at. One thing to mention is there is a hurricane alert. So when I was going through some of these weather sites, over here on weather.com, it came like flashing up. There's a hurricane over Belize right now, so it could impact Playa del Carmen, Mexico. Hopefully not, because if a hurricane goes through, they're going to cancel the golf tournament. So let's just hope that doesn't end up happening. So that I have to throw that out there. It's something that could end up happening. I'm not sure the timeline on it, though. Honestly, the only news I understand about that whole hurricane is the alert I saw come up. And it said it was over Belize, which is pretty close to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. It's probably on track for it. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that, make sure that it doesn't have too much of an impact. It was a Category 1 hurricane. These places, just like a South Florida, are very used to that. They're prepared. So it's not like it's going to be some drastic effect. I mean, maybe they could even just delay it a day and end up playing. But there's going to be some sort of recovery that has to happen. They're going to have to clean up a lot of debris off the golf course, particularly from some of the build outs. If that were to happen, actually thinking about it, they can't even have build outs out there in a hurry. It could get a little bit dicey. Let's hope the hurricane doesn't end up being a thing. And in terms of your playing conditions, I think it's going to play pretty similar. Like you see these sort of winds there in that 13 to 15 mile an hour range pretty much every single day at Playa del Carmen. A place that I've been before. I've been to Cancun 3 times in my life. Not exactly Playa del Carmen, but in that general area. And it's always windy, just like you'd expect for any sort of Caribbean type of climate. And yeah, you're going to see similar type of conditions, would be what I had to guess. Let's stop sharing our screen. Let's go over to the chat, see what's going on. Who's down there right now? We got Carby who says, great to see you. You've got 2 golfers you're questioning. Okay, let's get into it. What are your thoughts on Hubbard and Straka? So I like both of them. I think you're on the right sort of mindset there. I'll kind of talk about them a little bit more later, but I'm looking for players that are accurate off the tee, that are a plus approach players. That's always a plus, right? You're trying to look for the best players in the field, and those are typically the best iron players. And they are in okay form. The reason why I think that's a better than them being in scorching hot form is they're being a little bit pushed under the rug, right? There's not a ton of people running to the window to play a Hubbard and a Straka. I know Straka's getting a little bit of steam, but he's not mega chalk by any means. And Hubbard, because of some of his lackluster performances of late, isn't nearly as highly owned as he was over some of the last few weeks. So in general, Carmi, I'll talk about him a little bit more later when we go through the poll. I love him. I think you're on the right sort of a trail there. Roman says, hey, bud, what's going on? Welcome to the stream there, Roman. Hopefully you're doing well. Who do you like better out of these 2 matchups? So you have Hovland plus 140 or Scheffler plus 145. So, okay, I could choose between those 2. And then you have Hoagie at plus 110 and Brendan Todd at plus 130. You're saying Hovland in the morning slate is always a good thing? Yes, exactly. Yeah, those receptive conditions. And then you said Todd and Hoagie are in the evening group. Okay, so, yeah, I'm with you on Hovland. I like Hovland on a course that he's won at twice, coming in with decent form too, right? He's been trending in the right direction of late, had a few top finishes in the morning wave. I think you've got to be on Hovland there. And let's see, Hoagie and Brendan Todd. See, that's tough. And that first group, by the way, has just 3 killers in it. That's a fun one. But Brendan Todd, that's a little bit. I like both of those players. Brendan Todd and Tom Hoagie are 2 of my top plays this week. That's tough. I definitely am with you on Victor Hovland. I'll get back to you, Roman. Let me think about that one a little bit more. I'll get back to you. That's a really close one. I don't know, man. I like all of them though. They're all 4 of those players that you mentioned there are some of my top plays of the week. So it's kind of hard to choose between all of them. Wilson says, thoughts on Matt Kuchar? I love Matt Kuchar. He's actually a core pick for me. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out. But we'll give him a little bit of airtime here too. So he's $8,000. Matt Kuch down here. He's 12.1% owned. So he is getting a little bit of attention, which is a little bit annoying. But I like Matt Kuchar. He's got the accuracy off the tee. He's won here before, stiffed his caddy very famously at this event. But coming in with decent iron form, you look at his last 50 measured rounds, you can see he's not popping in any category, but outside off the tee is gaining about 1/3 of a stroke per round, actually closer to like half a stroke per round around the green and with the putting. And then off the tee, right, he loses strokes, but that's because of his distance. And we're at a 7,000-yard golf course. That's not an issue. He's going to have no problem hitting wedges into almost every single green. You got to like Matt Kuchar when he's going to get that wedge in hand. So I like him, Wilson Dog. I think you're onto a really sharp play there. That's for sure. Let's talk about these top end options, though. So at the top of the board, ownership's really flat. So I have Tony Finau down as a quote unquote fade, but it's not like he's much higher owned than everybody else, right? There's just a reason why I don't want to play Tony Finau this week. So we'll talk about that. And if you're looking for chalk up here, your highest owned player is Victor Hovland. You would expect that with him being back-to-back champion, him at $11,200, coming in with pretty solid form too. It makes a lot of sense. So I don't think you have to fade Victor Hovland. Not going to give you my take on him. It's on the Patreon, right? For anybody that wants to see what we're doing with him. But I think that he's a great play this week. So I don't want to tip my hand too much, but he's getting ownership. I think it's well warranted. Colin Morikawa, very solid off the tee in terms of his accuracy. Also getting quite a bit of attention. So there's no one up here. The lowest owned player, believe it or not, is Scotty Scheffler at 14.5% that you like get to for leverage, right? There's not anybody. I mean, even Scotty, right? He's what, 14.5% owned. He's no low owned pivot, right? You still got to take him in 35% of your lineups to get that 2x leverage that a lot of you are going after. It's just, you just take the plays that you like. Really, it's really that simple. Okay, guys, you don't need to overthink it this week. There's not this sort of situation where it's like, oh, this guy's 30% owned. We really got to think about whether we're playing him. If you like somebody, you think they're a good course fit, you have your reasons for playing them, play them. I'm not going to talk you on or off of people up here. The one guy I guess I'll give you my 2 cents on in the negative fashion would be Tony Finau. He just hasn't played in God knows how long. I mean, he was in all of that hot stretch of form at the end of the year. You had to love it, right? He's starting to look like the Tony Finau that all of us wanted to see. And I faded him a lot during that stretch. So that's why he's our number one golfer here. And, this should be a huge red flag. Anytime I fade Tony Finau, he usually ends up winning the golf tournament. I'll put that on record. He's done it to me just too many times to think of. It's just, it's a little bit of a meme at this point, but I'm not going to change my process, right? When I see him as a bad play for any sort of slate, I'm going to fade him. And for me, it's because of the lack of recent form. We haven't seen him very much. Even when he played at the President's Cup, he was just okay. He was kind of holding Max Homa back. I mean, Max Homa was on absolute fire for that event, whereas Tony Finau was just kind of average over those rounds. So in general, I don't know about how hot he was at that event, so I don't know how much we want to look into it. It just hasn't played, right? Let's look at this. So actually, we don't have the events on the recent form tab. I do it by start, but all of these starts for Tony Finau, right? They go to the top of the board here. This was the President's Cup, this first place finish, but 9th, 28th, 5th, 1st, and 28th. That's last season, right? Whereas everyone else up here has 2, 3, sometimes even 4 starts on their record on this season. We can really look at their recent form metrics and use them, right, to make decisions. The fact that he's number one in the field in terms of our modeling is just preposterous, right? Those are all from last year. So it's not even like we're pulling on any sort of recent data. So that's the issue with Tony Finau. He's more than likely going to be rusty to start. That's not to say that he'll miss the cut. I think that he'll make the cut, probably at least finish in the top 25, probably top 15 of this event. But in the 10K range, you're probably going to have the winner this week. I mean, one of these guys, I would say from Montgomery up, I think one of these guys is almost for sure going to win this week, or at the very least be in the top 3 and to be somebody that you absolutely have to have in DFS. And I'm not sure if Tony Finau is going to be that guy if he comes out and has a little bit of a rusty start. Love Billy Ho, love Taylor Montgomery. So I talked about Billy Ho in my core picks video. Make sure to check that out if you haven't seen it. But Taylor Montgomery, he's only 10.3% owned. And I thought he was going to be chalky. I mean, at this point, how could you not want to play Montgomery? I mean, look at this recent stretch of form. It's literally a joke, guys. Everyone else has at least one piece of like red on there, right? A red would be like a missed cut or something like in the 60s or 50s in terms of your placement, either hardly making a cut or missing a cut altogether. Look at this for Montgomery, okay? Some of these are Corn Ferry Tour results, so just understand that they're not all on the PGA Tour here. 13th, 15th, 9th, 3rd, 9th, 4th, 3rd. And if you keep going, it's more ridiculous results. Going into the tour, I told you guys that this guy was a killer. It was like blatantly obvious from just looking at the game log. And I'm not talking about like the eye test, which we'll talk about here in a second, why even more of the eye test is starting to make sense for me. From the game log perspective, it's obvious that this guy is one of the best players on tour already. Like I said this going into the year, like he's like our Cam Young this year. Now I'm starting to get to the point where like him and Tom Kim are like top 10 players on the PGA Tour now. Part of that is because of some of the live departures, right? There's not as much depth now. But these sort of players have surpassed that middle tier, right? They're no longer middle tier players to me. Like Taylor Montgomery should be at least $10,000 in this field. And I think should be one of the highest owned players in the field. So I was completely taken back when I saw Taylor Montgomery's ownership. And he's going to be one of my higher owned players on the slate now. And it's certainly probably my highest leveraged play on the slate. Now, could he come back to earth with the putting? Sure. But he's not known for that. So, and let me talk about the course fit and kind of like his long-term pedigree. There's this, I don't even know the best way to put it here. So let me take a sip of coffee and think about my words here. There's this sort of look that tour players give off at didn't mean to do that. Give off at a tour event where like when they're interacting with each other, you can tell like who the big dogs are. So like think about it like when you're especially like in a Saturday or a Sunday group, especially if you're in threesomes, like what we had at the CJ Cup there. You had groups where you had like two superstars, sometimes all three superstars in a group. And a lot of the big name guys, you know, they interact with each other. They'll talk throughout the tee boxes and whatnot. And you had a group with Taylor Montgomery, and it was two superstars there on Saturday. I think one of them, I'm trying to think of who they were. I think Hovland was one of them at the CJ Cup. And then there was another top like 15, top 20 player in the world. And they were treating Montgomery like he was one of their bros. And it's like unquantifiable, right? It's something that I saw in person, but you could tell the respect that they already have for Taylor Montgomery's game. And he's a first, 5-6 starts on the PGA Tour. Every single broadcaster that talks about Montgomery talks about him like he's the next big thing. People need to wake up to it, right? Like last year, we started to see Cam Young go off early, right? At the Sanderson Farms, he had that top 5 finish. And people were kind of like hesitant to hop on board, right? Like even with Tom Kim guys, like it was like obvious to me after like his first, second start that this kid's a stud. You have to play him every single week. There's still people that are hesitant about playing him. Like when he won at the Shriners, like there were people calling for him to be faded. That's why he was like 13, 14% owned. We have to like adjust quicker. That's something that I think a lot of people out there, like something that I definitely try to avoid. And I think I've done a good job avoiding that over the last few months is when we have talent that's easy to recognize, hop on board, particularly when people aren't doing so. And this just reminds me all so much of that Tom Kim situation where he came in much lower owned than he should have been. And the price tag was right? He's at $9,000 and he's just a much better player than his peers. Because I like Tom Hoagie this week, for example, but he's $100 more than a Taylor Montgomery, or $100 less than a Taylor Montgomery. That pricing discrepancy is a little bit of a joke to me, especially considering Tom Hoagie is much higher owned than a Taylor Montgomery. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in getting to Taylor. I didn't think it was going to be there, but there certainly is now. That's all with the Montgomery spiel there. Again, he's an absolute stud. He's not super long off the tee. I can tell you that from the eye test. From the iron perspective, he's just like okay, but his putting, like he makes everything, like every single putt that he hits, it goes in. He makes over 100 feet of putts pretty much every single round he goes out there. It's ridiculous. McNeely has that random Draftkings play this week that is getting a ton of steam. Now, we've seen it go off before where these sort of players have won golf tournaments and Draftkings looks like an absolute genius. And then it's happened before, like what we had, I think it wasn't Adam Hadwin. It was Troy Merritt. Troy Merritt was like 30-1 at one of those like random John Deere events when he should have been someone like 75 or 80-1. And then he went out there and missed the cut, was like one of the worst plays of the week. And then you have, on the flip side where they look like absolute geniuses. So it's one of those situations where it's like, what do the sports books know about McNeely? You would imagine it has to do with the, recent form, which is starting to get a little bit better, right? 10th, 12th, and 18th place finish. And then the event history where he's 11th, 12th, and 26th, right? So 3 top 26 finishes probably has a lot to do with that. Let's catch up on chat. Again, if you have any questions, toss them down there. Antonio asks, hey, Luke, what's up? Are you worried about Collins and Scotty's putter? Colin has been an utter disaster with his putter. Yeah, that's kind of Colin's MO, though. No, right? That's something that he does pretty much for his entire career. He's been better of late. So It kind of looks a little bit worse if you look at like the last, I don't know, like 10 to 15 events. You'll see some of those positives, right? He was starting to post last year. We can't really expect that from Colin, right? So yeah, it's worrisome. He's not in that solid stretch of form with the putter, but that's just kind of Colin Morikawa's MO. Like he's going to go out there, he's going to lose with the putter more often than not, and he'll spike every once in a while and gain like 4 or 5 strokes putting. And when he does that, he typically wins golf tournaments. So I tend to like those sort of players, at least for GPPs. If you're playing cash, if you're playing a single entry, that sort of thing, I'm not as willing to take a risk on that sort of guy. But, if I'm playing a portfolio sort of approach where I have 150 lineups, I'm still willing to take a shot on that sort of guy. Scotty Scheffler, on the other hand, he only has that one event sample size. So he changed the putter going into last event, and it was horrible. I mean, he led strokes to the field. I guess the one thing we could say is it's probably not going to get any worse than that, because he lost, what was it, like 4 or 5 strokes putting over those 4 rounds at the CJ Cup. If he can just be a neutral putter, that's a top 5 finish, given how good his ball striking was that week, let alone if he can gain. We know he can gain on the greens. He typically wins. He was able to do it 5 or 6 times last year and was able to convert those into wins. We'll have to see. And you asked about Lauer too. You say, can he continue to post top 20s weekly? I think you kind of know the answer based on how you asked that question, huh? No, right? No one's going to go out there and post top 20s every single week. You're going to see regression sooner rather than later. Now, that's not saying this week, right? We have to look at these as independent outcomes. Just because he's on a streak of top 20s doesn't mean that now he's just more likely to have top 20s, right? Like maybe we need to adjust our modeling slightly to make him just a higher EV player, that sort of thing. But no, it's not like he's just a top 20 machine now, right? I think you kind of get that with how you asked that question, though. just based on the tone there, I think you get that. So yeah, I'm on board with you. I don't think he's going to continue that. Now, do I think it's a horrible play? No, because he's not mega chalk here. What's his price tag at? Good old Lauer. He's got to have a good old, what is he? Oh, $7,600. Yeah, that's why he's getting attention. It's a fair price tag. That's what I'll say. Like based on the form, $7,600 it's a steal. Like he's way cheaper than he should be. But you got to figure some of that regression is coming sooner rather than later. Let's catch back up with our poll. So we talked about Montgomery, talked about McNeely a little bit. This 9K range has got Seamus in it. Jason Day's been a lot better of late. So I do think that he'll get some ownership, but not nearly as much as like a Griot, McNeely. He's going to be in the single digits. Seamus Power probably right around 10% owned. Miliano Grillo, I still love him here, but he is getting a little bit of attention. He's 14.5% owned. He's got the good course history. He's accurate off the tee, loves past palm grass, and it makes sense given his lack of skill with the flat stick. So I like that. I do want to talk about KH Lee here, though, and he's not a sleeper because he's still like 10.9% owned. But KH Lee kills an easy golf course, and this track doesn't really fit that mold. Like it's not like a TPC Craig Ranch, right? Where we have for the AT&T Byron Nelson, where you're going to take it to like 25, 30 under par for a winner. But you're going to see, you saw 23 under par win. You've seen 20 under par win, and it's a short golf course, which plays directly into KH Lee's skill set. Birdie or better percentage is a stat that we're looking at, and pretty much any week that's going to be a key stat, he's going to be somebody that I have my eye on. I think he's a sneaky little pick there. So I wanted to point that out. Love KH Lee. Russell Knox, only 8.9% owned. Still love that. He's got the accuracy we're looking for, not the form, though. That's the thing. I'm taking a chance on Russell Knox. So I guess I just have to make that clear here. I'm pretty sure I did so on my core picks video, but he's coming in with sketchy form to say the least. Outside of approach, off the tee has been a little bit hairy. The putter's been atrocious over the last 2-3 months at this point, but he could turn it around. Like historically, he's one of the better putters in this field, and you're going to see that here at some point this season. Matt Kuchar, we talked about off the top. So if you want to get my take on that, go ahead and check it out towards the beginning of the stream. But Patrick Rogers, this isn't a fade because of ownership. This is a fade on skill set. So this is just to give you like an overarching sort of idea of the types of players that I just want nothing to do with this week, okay? And that's players that get it done around the green, that are pretty good around the green players. Patrick Rogers is like above average around the green, but mostly players that are just bombers off the tee, that gain a lot of strokes with their distance and aren't accurate. Patrick Rogers sprays it like an absolute fire hydrant, like an irrigation system out there. He's just spraying left to right like one of those sprinklers at a baseball field. The man cannot keep it on planet Earth. Now, he can club down, right? So you've seen players with a little bit more calculated approach, like a Harris English, have success here, win in the past. By the way, a lot of you probably didn't know Harris English has won here before. Same thing with John Huh, one back here like 10 years ago. I'm back here in like 2013, 2012, something like that. Those are accuracy first sort of guys, right? Harris English, maybe not so much anymore, but he's been clubbing down at this golf course. Patrick Rogers has not shown an ability to do so. He's not that sort of guy that's going to lay down off the tee more often than not. He's going to go for it most of the time. So those sort of guys I'm fading. I'm also considering fading guys like a Keith Mitchell. He's another bomber off the tee that gains a lot with his distance. Let's see. Who else would fit that sort of mold? Lee Hodges, a little bit of a bomber, not the most accurate player. That sort of mold. So that's why I wanted to point out Patrick Rogers there. It's not really picking on him specifically, but more that archetype of player. Top of the 7K range now, you do have some chalk here. So you have a bunch of guys that are like 10 to 15% owned. So Harris English at 5.7% is relatively low. Like Dean Burmeister, I think he's just a better player than people give him credit for. In the middle of the 7K range, JT Poston. And this just seems like a JT Poston sort of golf course, right? Like, think about the John Deere Classic. It's kind of like another short, easy birdie fest. Now, completely different from the look standpoint, also the agronomy standpoint, but it's a short course where you got to be accurate, right? You got to keep it in the short stuff there so you can apply spin to the golf ball, and then it's a wedge fest. And there's one thing that JT Poston can do. It's hit a damn field wedge. Like, it's beautiful. If you've seen him hit a wedge shot, which if you saw the John Deere Classic, you've seen plenty of them, he hits darts to 5-10 feet all day. So somebody like Poston at one of these shorter courses where he's just 6% owned, I think brings a ton of upside to the table. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Poston. He hasn't been posting the best, and by the way, no pun intended there, Poston, the best performances of late when it comes to the shots gained metrics. But I'm willing to look past it. I think he's got the upside we're looking for. He's still gaining on approach, gaining a ton with the putter like we're used to seeing. And off the tee, though he's a slight loser, this isn't an off the tee golf course, right? Like, when we're trying to take him, it's a harbor town. We're trying to take him at these shorter type of tracks where it's all about those wedges and then the putter, which we know he's absolutely electric with both of those categories. So I think he brings a lot of upside here. Let's catch up on chat, see if there's any questions. As per usual, if you're watching this, go ahead and smash that like button. Goes a long way with helping me grow the channel. And if you're watching this for the first time, welcome on in and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We do a lot of breakdowns here, core picks videos. So you can see like all my value picks, core picks, all of that. I have whole videos dedicated to those players. So if it seems like I'm kind of going slow over them, that's why, because we have all of that content up. But make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss any of that. Let's see what we got going on, though. Maddie Smith says, love the show, mate. Welcome on in, Maddie. Glad to have you here. He said, Joel Damon, normally not a favorite of yours, but you seem to love these, but he seems, sorry about that, boys. Too much coffee in my system. I shouldn't be drinking coffee this late, by the way. I am not going to sleep tonight, but hey, is what it is. I'm good, right? I can play video games pretty late tonight, but we'll be feeling it tomorrow. And you said, Joel Damon loves the greens. What do you think about him? I love him this week. So I talked him up in my value picks video. So I'll go over him here, though, a little bit more. He's getting some attention now, though, which is a little bit concerning. I thought he was going to be like 7-8% owned. Like, I thought he was going to get a little bit of attention because he likes the greens here. He's played well at Corrales, so he won there last year, which also has Paspalum. He's played well at the Puerto Rico Open before, another course with Paspalum, and he's an accuracy sort of player. So like Joel Damon has everything going for him, right? Like, he's going to keep it in play. His irons are a plus. Right? If you look at his last 50 measured rounds, Joel Damon is one of the better iron players in this field. So let's find good old Joel Damon. What's his price tag? He's $7,200. I should have known that. Whatever. I already made my lineups a while ago, so I've already hit the eject button on some of this information. But you can see here he's gaining off the tee, which a lot of that due to his accuracy, gaining on approach and losing with the putter. So if we know that he likes these sort of greens because he's played well at this course and over there at Corrales, he's a good course fit, then yeah, we got to fire him up. So yeah, I have to say I am a Joel Damon guy. So I know you said like you're not typically one to play Joel Namath. I usually am that sort of guy. Even if you're not, I think it's the sort of week to fire him up. So great question. Love to have you in here, Maddie, and enjoy the rest of the stream, boss. Tony says thoughts on Ben Griffin. He absolutely choked that tourney away. Yeah, bro. I thought he was a dog shit play last week, and I was blatantly wrong there. Like that was one of the worst takes that I've had for quite some time. He proved me wrong. Like I honestly thought he was a nobody. I thought his like little Wyndham Championship top 5 was just like a blip on the radar. And I thought that people that were playing him were I like called him fish. It was just a tough scene for me, right? He went out there and nearly won the golf tournament. That's gonna happen. Hey, you're gonna get proven wrong every once in a while, but I don't know if I love him here because he's mega chalky. He's like over 10% owned for somebody there in the 6K range. He's about twice as owned, if not like 3 times as owned, as like 90 to 95% of the 6K range, if not more of them. There's like, I believe the next highest owned player is like 4, maybe like 4.5% there in like the mid to top end of that 6K range. So he's just getting too much attention. Anybody in that 6K range that's, getting a lot of attention is just going to be a huge red flag for me. Particularly when it's somebody as volatile as Ben Griffin. So, hey, he proved me wrong last week. He might do it again this week, but I just don't see it. It's a volatile sport, and he's a young, up-and-coming sort of guy. I wish him the best. Great story, especially after hearing his interview. It's hard not to root for that sort of player, but not if he's 10% owned. We also have Antonio says, thoughts on Davis Riley. It seems like he's completely fallen off, and you've gone for a top 40. So I think that's an okay market to go after him. But I would think I would be more aggressive about it. And so let me challenge your thinking there. So yeah, he's kind of fallen off. He's no longer consistent. If you're taking him in a top 40 sort of market, right, like that's more of like a 50-50. You're just kind of hoping he makes the cut, has an okay week. You're getting like a middling return there. Why not go in like the top 10 market? Because it feels like when Davis Riley has it working, he really has it working. I mean, he's a momentum player. We know the irons can get scorching hot in that putter. We don't really have a sample size here on past Palm. So I don't think we can make too many inferences about his course fit here. But yeah, you're spot on with the ownership, right? He's low owned. He's $7,800. A lot of people don't want to play him because it looks like he's fallen off a cliff. I think he's a talented guy that's in a rough stretch of golf, which is going to happen to a lot of these top end players. So yeah, if you're looking for, I think like a dart throw that might end up going out there and smashing this week, it's Davis Riley, but he deals with accuracy issues. So if he starts spraying it off the tee, he doesn't have his stuff this week. He's for sure missing the cut. Like Davis Riley, if he has his stuff, might be, your leader after 36 rounds. But if he doesn't, he also could be dead last place. It would not surprise me given just how inaccurate that he can get. So I think you're onto something there. I definitely like him this week. I also think it'll be relatively low in 2. Martin says, Luke, any outrights you're taking? All the important questions here. So I haven't placed my outright bets yet, but I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm pretty certain on what I'm going to be doing here. So a lot of the guys at the top got bet down, which honestly, like I said at the top of the show, for anybody that was here before, I think somebody from Taylor Montgomery up, I think at least 67%, like 2/3 of the win equity is between these like 7 players right here from Montgomery up. But at this point, I'm thinking about just a few little long shots because all the value up there has been sucked away and it's a birdie fest. Like, let's go through some of the winners. Like, let me just go through the winners list to prime everybody for this. Okay. We're going to just go back in time. So you had Victor Hovland in the last 2 years. Like, okay, whatever, right? You're a really good player. Brendan Todd, Matt Kuchar, Patton Kazire. That's a pretty eye-opening one to me. Pat Perez, Graham McDowell, Charlie Hoffman. Now get this one, okay? Because this is 2014 now, okay? Harris English in 2014, 8 years ago, right? Like he fell off a cliff from like 2015 to 2020. So he won just before that happened. John Huh won in 2012. So 10 years ago, you had John Huh win, Johnson Wagner, and then Beckman back there in 2010. So a lot of just like random names, right? The only real like headliner that's been taken it home of late is Victor Hovland. So at this point of the week, I'm starting to think about some of these long shots, and like it's like a JT Poston is on my list because he's that sort of guy. Like when he gets on a heater, he can go out there and win an event. Davis Riley, like those sort of just like home run play sort of guys. Maybe Harris English is the move, right? Like somebody who's in that, 50 to 75 to 1 range that has good course history. Harris English is one here. You could go to John Huh. So what's John Huh's? I don't know what his outright number is, but his price tag is right down there towards the top end of the 6K range. I think I'm going to take 4 or 5 of these course history long shots that just like one of these random names that seems to win this Mayakoba championship, because I know Victor Hovland's kind of like broken that narrative over the last 2 years. It's one of these short, just like geezers of players that like never win. Like, I don't want to say like they never win because they all have tour wins, but they're not like proven killers on tour. Like they're just like your average run-of-the-mill tour players that win this event. And that's the type of guy that I think I'm going to bet, particularly because the guys at the top of the board have already been bet down. You said, yeah, Kazire and Perez winning. Yeah, Kazire's the one that makes me laugh because that guy is not accurate off the tee. So it's like, how did he even win this event? Like, Kazire sprays it more than I do off the tee. And the guy won. Perez, I understand a little bit more. Short guy, right? He can keep it in play, but fucking Pan Kazire, good old Pan. He's fun to watch in person. I've seen him break 2 clubs at TPC Sawgrass. He plays like golf a lot like I do. Let's just say that, with a lot of passion, as I would call it. A lot of other people would call it just anger, but that's okay, right? We can call it whatever we'd like. Hayden Buckley at $7,500. He's a fade for me. People just love playing the guy. He's like 14% owned. He's by far the highest owned player in this 7K range, and that's why I'm fading him. It's not really a rocket science for why I'm not playing him. Adam Long is getting some ownership. I have him at right around 10%, but he's still lower owned than Buckley. Now, I was worried about the ownership of Long because I've seen a ton of people talking him up. I think he's just a home run play, makes sense pretty much across the board. So it makes sense that he's getting that ownership, but it's not so high where I have to bail ship. So I'm still playing him at 9.6%. Into the 7K range, love Straka, love Hubbard. I know a few people talked about him before. If I had to choose between the two, I guess I would take Sepp Straka, but he's also a little bit higher owned than a Mark Hubbard. So I guess it depends if you're looking for some ownership leverage. Then maybe you might want to go with Hubbard if you're in that sort of scenario. In terms of this bottom of the 7K, love Kirk. Talked about Damon, love him too. But S.H. Kim, my guy S.H. Kim is an accurate as hell driver. This guy hits almost every single fairway. And in fact, I think he can probably hit driver more than most players just because of how straight he hits the ball. He's an electric putter. He's one of those shorter sort of players that tends to hit their wedges better. So we're not 100% sure on what kind of player that he is, but based on just the eye test, right, the small sample size that we have, I think this is a really good course fit for him. So S.H. Kim, honestly, the more I think about it, I might bet him outright. He might be one of those like random dart throws that I throw this week. I think Joel Damon's probably going to be one. Like I might bet, like I usually don't, guys, it's so weird when it comes to my outright betting. Like if you've seen, like I don't do a ton of it. Like usually when I bet, I'll bet like 1, maybe 2 players. And usually it's like a top tier guy that I'm betting. I usually don't go down to some of these lower tier options. It's a weird week where I might bet 10 guys this week. Like I might just take out the full buckshot, right? And go and try and hit one of these long shots. So we'll have to see. But yeah, these sort of guys, I think this is like the range to hit in terms of outrights. Like one of these random dudes, and these would certainly qualify as random dudes, like a Chris Kirk. Like Chris Kirk, it just like screams win this week. I'm definitely betting Chris Kirk. Like it just screams a random win for a good old Kirky boy, which would be awesome because I love Chris Kirk. Great guy. Great story if you don't know about what he had to overcome on tour. So I'm always rooting for him. Let's move down into the 6K range now. So I love Martin Laird, Party Marty. Accurate off the tee, gotta love that. And low owned, right? Only 2% owned. So love what I'm seeing there. He's kind of like that dog shit putter that, on past Pullum, like in a $1 million Grilla, you're kind of hoping that helps him out a little bit. So I think Party Marty, worth a few looks in your lineups. In terms of punt plays, that's pretty much what we're at down here in the 6K. There's a ton of them. So if you're on the Patreon, you can see my poll. There's like 20 guys I'm playing down here in the 6K range. So I'm not playing them in very many lineups, right? So like a Ches Reavie, for example, he's 2% owned. I might be playing him in like 6% of my lineups this week. Callum Turan, I think, is a great play, right? I'm going to play him in like 5-6% of my lineups. There's just a ton of guys down here that I'm scattershotting. You have John Huh, right? Past winner. I think he's worth a few looks. But a few guys I'm going to talk about specifically here. Henrik Norlander at $6,200. Boy, oh boy, do I hate this guy. So I'm just expecting him to go out there and burn me this week. But if there's one time I'm going to play Henrik, it's in windy conditions and it's at a short golf course. He can hit a ton of fairways. That's his specialty. He keeps it out of the long stuff. He's going to keep himself out of trouble at this event. He's an okay putter too. So the reason why I don't like Norlander is he's burned me a lot when I've played him. And like I played him for like this 10 event stretch, like 3 or 4 years ago in PGA DFS. Where like he missed the cut every single time, and it just it annoyed the crap out of me. And then the 1 week I didn't play him, it was at the Players Championship, an event I was at in person, and then he nearly won the event. It was a tough scene for good old Henrik Norlander on my part, but I think he's a good play here. He's a good course fit. A few other guys I'll point out. You have Kazire, right? He won here before. I guess you could play him. Makes sense at $6,300. You have Lashley, pretty accurate driver. Ryan Armour, accurate driver. Let's see. MJ Daffy and Piercy, they fit that sort of role. Doug Gim, Lucas Glover, Danny Lee, another accurate player. Richie Werenski, accurate off the tee. Still like Chad Ramey here. Sam Stevens, accurate off the tee sort of guy. Jim Herman loves himself a short golf course, tropical golf course. There's a ton of guys that you can punt down here. So I'm not going to talk about all of them. They're on the Patreon page. I don't really have to give you that long of an argument because I'm playing them in 3% of lineups, 4% of lineups, right? Like we're pure scattershotting down low. If one of those random dudes ends up finishing in the top 5, well, you're probably going to have them in that large field GPP. And again, I'm playing a 150 max contest, so I have to be thinking a little bit differently. Let's go ahead and hop over to Draftkings now. We're going to go through a few lineups, talk about some of the chalky builds, some of the thought process that is needed for hand building this week. Whether it's for cash or for large field GPPs. So let's bring up DraftKings and let's see if there's any questions on chat to catch up on. Let's see what we've got. Anointed said birdie or better percentage. Could you interpret this stat in regards to Morikawa in Montgomery? So I'm assuming you're looking at a really small sample size. If you're looking at Morikawa at 2.41 birdie or better percentage, that would be for a round. So I'm assuming that's birdies per round. Birdie or better percentage in most databases is going to be in a percentage. So not sure what you're looking at there, Anointed, exactly. I'm assuming you're looking at birdies per round. Morikawa long-term is a high birdie percentage player. I know in 2020, he was top 5 on tour in terms of birdie or better percentage. Montgomery, though, with his putter, he's a killer. He's also going to be posting probably top 10, top 15 birdie numbers for the foreseeable future. So in terms of that stat, that you're looking at birdies per round with those two metrics there. Antonio Esparza says, Justin Rose is playing and you completely forgot that he played golf. Thoughts on him? Yeah, dude, he's a tough guy to hunker down on. I have a tough time getting a read. He's been injured, so we've seen him take a lot of time off. He hasn't had that many starts this year. Even towards the end of last year, right? He wasn't through the playoffs, so he wasn't playing all that much. He's an okay course fit. Right, like off the tee, he's going to keep it in play. You got to like that about Justin Rose, at least if he's playing well. Now, you've seen him of late spray it off the tee. I forget what event it was. It was the one event he played this fall. He shot 6 over par the first day, and it was because he could not keep it in play. It was one of those courses with a dense tree line, so he was hitting it, having to chip out sideways constantly. I don't think he's informed. If you're just going to take a random flyer, just hope that he can find his form kind of of Jason Day has over the last few events, take him in 5% of lineups, right? I'm not going to have the stones to go out there and do so, but I understand it. He was a world number 1 at one point. You got to give him a little bit of credit there. And you said, thoughts on the Aussies? Okay, so Jason Day, is Baddeley Australian? I didn't know that about Baddeley. I thought Baddeley was American. Might be wrong there. But you said you like Endicott's game too. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Endicott. It's hard to say how good he is at this point, but he might be one of those players that we want to jump on early. And Jason Day, oh boy. I wanted to avoid talking about Jason Day, but you put me on the spot here, so I guess we'll talk about him. He's $9,200. I honestly don't know what to make of his game. I'm just going to be completely honest with you, Antonio. I don't know what to think about Jason Day. He looks good on paper. You look at the stats, the last 3 events, he's gained on approach. The putter seems to be back. and he looks like a Jason Day that can be somewhat competitive. And actually, he has room for improvement. That's the crazy thing with his stats. It's not like he's maxing out his potential. But then you look at the events before that, right? It's missed cut. It's hardly making the cut. It's losing a bunch of strokes on the greens. It's just hard to rely on that. So kind of similar to a Justin Rose, they have injury concerns. They're past their prime. They're inconsistent at this point. It all comes down to the ownership. And then, Jason Day is expensive. He's actually still getting ownership this week. It just makes him a hard play for me. So I'm going to have to pass. I'm not going to be playing Jason Day this week, but it looks good on paper. That's why I wanted to avoid it, because it wouldn't surprise me if he had a good week. Like, the stats are there, but it's just so hard to rely on that, particularly if he's getting the ownership that he is. And it's kind of the same thing with Justin Rose, except Rose is a lot lower owned, and he's also cheaper, right? He's not $9,200. So I think if you were going to go to anybody between those two guys, I would most likely go in Justin Rose's direction. Let's go through a few of these lineups. So what we're going to do here is go through the cash build to start, which is also going to be a really good way to go through some of the chalk on the slate. And then afterwards, we're going to go through a GPP build. So trying to be a little bit more unique and the sort of lineups that I'll actually be making. So I don't play a lot of cash, but if I were playing cash, you're 100% playing Viktor Hovland. There's no thoughts about it. You are playing him. He's the one piece of chalk that I think you pretty much have to play this week. Outside of that, you want to be a little bit more balanced when you're coming to a cash lineup. So I think you want to take some of these 8K options that are chalky. So just, off the bat, I think Hayden Buckley, you want to take him there. Justin Lauer with his consistency, probably somebody that you want to consider playing. Let's go up to Matt Kuchar. Matt Kuchar has been very consistent around this venue. And let's take another course history guy. So towards the top of the 8K range, let's go with a Brendan Todd. So this sort of lineup, again, I can't put the last player in here because of Draftkings rules out there, but you just want to take guys that are going to be 10, 12, 13% plus owned that are good course fits. And all of the players on this list fit that build. Now, you could be even more balanced about this, not even take somebody towards the top. Let's go here and take a Tom Hoge, and rather than a Hayden Buckley, we can probably take another one of these 9K options. So let's go ahead and add a McNeely. We can add McNeely there. Actually, 6,500 might be a little bit aggressive for our last spot. So let's go ahead and instead of McNeely, take a Grillo. Doing so puts us at 6,800 bucks. And you have a lot more options here, particularly one that's 10% owned there that I faded last week. That would perfectly fit out that sort of cash lineup. So that's the direction that I'd go with. I think starting in the 9K range is the way that I would go about it. We're able to fit 3 of those guys on like a Hoge, Grillo, and Brendan Todd, rather than going to the complete top and taking a Viktor Hovland. So I know he said you like 100% had to have a Hovland in your lineup. If you're taking a 10K plus player, I think it 100% should be Hovland, but I don't think you have to take somebody from that range. In terms of a GPP build, I'm going a lot more studs and duds. So rather than with our cash build, which was a lot more balanced in these large field contests, I think that you're going to get a lot of these like random guys at the bottom. It's why I'm scattershotting it so much that go off this week. So we'll start at the top of the board, take a few of the studs. So we're going to start with a Viktor Hovland in this lineup. Actually, let's take Scotty, right? Scotty is one of our core picks. I'll show you how I'd use him in a lineup. So let's put Scotty in there. Our second man in, we're going to take Maverick McNeely at 9,400 bucks, and we're already down to 7,300 bucks, which might seem a little bit aggressive, but you'll see there's guys at the bottom of the board that I'm okay getting to. So in the 8K range, we're going to go towards the top here and take, let's go ahead and put Dietrich in there at $8,800. I think he's a little bit sneaky this week. And now we got to take some value, and you'll see how easy this opens up. With how much value is down here, guys, it gets a no-brainer. Let's just put Norlander, right? I talked him up, right? We can put Norlander in this lineup. We're already back up to 7,100 bucks. In fact, if we go down here and take somebody that's also relatively cheap, we can take another 8K option, or at least a top of the 7K range option with our last spot. So let's put Lashley in there, 6,400 bucks. I think he's more than reasonable for this golf course. And now we have $7,800 remaining for our last spot. And plenty of different guys you can get to, right? There's, Riley, English, and Burmeister. I think they're all pretty solid options that you could get to. So in large field GPPs, I'm taking a lot of dips into this 6K range, and it's just one of those golf courses. You see all of these random names that pop here. It's short. Pretty much anybody can contend here. If you've got a hot putter and you can hit your wedge as well, which all of these tour players can hit their wedges to 5-10 feet, especially if they've got their swing down. So you can take shots on anybody, right? Like, sure, there's, the random names that we've never seen before, like a Moran Santander, a Benitez and Adamonis, Vasquez, like guys that you can't recognize or that you've never seen before, don't play them, right? But like legit tour players like a Robert Streb, like a Nate Lashley, who we talked about. I mean, Baddeley, right? And actually, yeah, Baddeley is Australian, huh? Yeah, he's from Australia. That's right. Okay. Huh. I guess I just never really thought about that with Baddeley. You're right. He is Australian. Those sort of players, though, just play them. Like they're more than in play this week. Like a Ches Reavie at $6,700. I have no issues going to that studs and duds type of approach. But that is all I've got for the live stream, guys. My time is pretty much up here. I appreciate everyone's stuff. Oh, leave site. No, I do not want to leave site. Sorry about that, boys. The thing almost ended up closing on me here. But I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Best of luck with all of your lineups this week. We will be doing showdown content. So for rounds 2 through 4, I will be going live. Last week at the Bermuda, there just wasn't much demand for it. And then I was at the Live Golf event too. So it was a little bit tough to go live. I still did all of my projections, of course. But this week, we will have you covered from the live chat perspective. So I'm looking forward to it. But until next time, best of luck. And I'll catch you guys for those live streams.